They tied her in the square for shame, but he stepped forward and married her before anyone could laugh. Texas Hill Country, 1883. The church bell tolled over Larkspur Ridge, sharp, relentless. It wasn't a call to prayer, it was a summons to judgment. The town square overflowed. Men with dirt-creased hands, women with trembling lips, wide-eyed children peeking from behind skirts. The air was thick with dust and fury. At the center stood Clara Bell Hartley, tied to the same stone post once used to auction cattle. Her wrists were bound tight, sunburned skin chafed raw. A gray dress clung to her frame, streaked in ash and sweat. Her dark hair hung wild, her chin lifted, proud. No tears, no begging. Judge Thaddeus Morgan stepped forward. Black coat flared behind him. He held a parchment in one hand, his voice hard. 3 days ago, he declared, this woman returned to our soil without answer or apology. He jabbed a finger toward Clara. She is the widow of Eli Hartley, second to the Red Valley Gang, the same gang that bled this town dry, burned our road, and left 3 sons dead. Murmurs surged. Clara stood still, unreadable. Last week, Edgar Rusk, the butcher of Red Valley, was found dead in Devil's Hollow, Morgan went on. Alongside him, maps, stolen deeds, and a ledger. One name circled in red, Clara Bell Hartley. Gasps. Someone spit on the ground. A woman shouted, "She brought ruin on us." She survived when no one else did, cried a man, then vanished for 3 years. Clara's voice was calm, cutting through the noise. You were not there. It quieted the square, if only for a breath. Morgan sneered. No, but we buried the dead. We bore the scars, and now you come back, forgiveness in your eyes? I expected nothing, Clara said evenly. Good, he snapped, because you'll get nothing. He turned to the crowd. No record she ever stood against the gang, no sign of remorse. The ledger is proof. She was no bystander. She was one of them. She should hang like the rest, someone shouted. They only spared her 'cause she was theirs. A rock hit the dirt near her boots. Morgan raised a hand. She'll remain tied till sunset. Let all see the face of betrayal. Another rock landed closer. A boy stepped forward. 9, maybe 10. Dirt on his cheeks. A stone clenched in his trembling hand. He raised it. Clara didn't flinch. His arm drew back. Stop! The voice cracked like thunder. Every head turned. From the blacksmith's shadow, a man stepped forward. Dust coated his boots. A sweat-stained hat hid his eyes. She's my wife, he said. The bell fell silent. Judge Morgan blinked. What did you say? The man walked closer, slow and sure, parting the crowd by presence alone. Clara's breath caught. He stopped 10 feet from the post. She's my wife, he repeated, and she won't stand here alone. Gasps, whispers. A woman clutched her chest. Identify yourself, Morgan demanded. The man lifted his hat. Sunlight struck his face. More gasps. Jesse Vane, the stable hand, the quiet one, the man no one thought twice about. Clara stared, stunned. Jesse looked only at the judge. I married her before the Red Valley Gang fell. Before any of this. Whatever Eli was, Clara is not him. She never was. Morgan's eyes narrowed. You claim legal marriage. I do. No one heard of it. He's kept it quiet. Wait. Because truth never mattered here, Jesse said. Only fear. Morgan turned to Clara. Her posture hadn't changed, but her eyes had. Less defiant now, more searching. The boy with the stone lowered his hand. The crowd held its breath. For the first time since the bell began, the square was quiet. The dust hadn't settled when Judge Morgan stepped down from the crate, boots striking the earth with purpose. His eyes locked on Jesse Vane, like he was trying to burn a hole through him. You claim she is your wife? Morgan asked. Jesse nodded. That is right. Murmurs rolled through the crowd. Someone cursed. Another laughed. You expect us to believe a stable hand married the widow of Eli Hartley? Morgan sneered. A woman tied to the second man in the most blood-soaked gang this territory has ever known? Jesse held his gaze. I expect you to follow the law. Morgan's lip twitched. We were married before Red Valley fell, Jesse continued. Before Hartley died. Before Clara's name meant anything. She left that life. I gave her a new one. A man shouted from the back. He's lying. She disappeared for years. She left me after the smoke cleared, Jesse replied evenly. I do not blame her. The world offered her no mercy. Morgan looked to Clara, standing at Jesse's side, arms still red from the rope. Well, Miss Clara, he said, voice acidic, is that the truth? She glanced at Jesse, then at the crowd. Her voice was quiet, flat. I do not know what truth means anymore, but he's the first person to call me anything but whore since I came back. Morgan turned to his deputy. Fetch the ledger. The deputy ran into the courthouse, returned with a tattered book. Morgan flipped through it. No license, no record. There wouldn't be, Jesse said. We made vows before God, not the courthouse. You understand, Morgan said, tapping the book. By this town's charter, unregistered unions aren't valid. Jesse didn't flinch. Section 12. Marital Protection Clause. A husband may seek immunity for his wife from criminal charges if the union predates the accusation. Morgan squinted. You read the law? I read everything I can find. Figured it might save someone one day. The crowd stirred. Jesse Vane, the quiet mule wrangler, quoting statutes like a lawyer. Morgan rubbed his temple, sighing. 7 days. That's what you get. Live as man and wife under watch. If your story unravels, if the marriage is a lie, you both hang. Jesse nodded. Understood. Morgan waved to the deputy. Cut her free. But Jesse stepped forward first. He untied Clara himself, gentler this time. The rope fell. She rubbed her wrists, but didn't look at him. He offered a hand, she ignored it, and walked away on her own. The crowd parted slowly, confused, unsettled. Some still muttered curses. Others stared with wary silence. Jesse and Clara walked side by side until they reached the shade of the general store. Clara stopped and turned to him. What the hell was that? A stay of execution, Jesse said simply. You told them we were married. I did. But we're not. We could have been. Her eyes narrowed. You think this is some game? No, Jesse said softly. I think this is the only chance you were ever going to get. They needed someone to blame. You came back at the wrong time. You were going to hang, Clara. You don't know me. I know enough. She folded her arms. Why would you risk yourself for me? Why now? Jesse looked out toward the square, the dust where the crowd had stood. Because I watched you fall once, and I never paid for that, not once. Clara's mouth opened, but she said nothing. Jesse pulled his hat lower. We've got 7 days. You can hate me for all of them. Just stay alive long enough to decide. He walked on. A moment passed before Clara followed. Neither noticed the pair of eyes watching from the blacksmith's barn. Eyes that didn't just remember. Eyes that now recognized. The house they were given sat on the edge of Larkspur Ridge, just beyond where the cedar trees began to climb the hills. It had no porch, one crooked window, and a roof that leaned left like a tired man. No one had lived there in years. Mold grew in the corners. A bird had made a nest inside the chimney. Clara stood in the doorway with her arms crossed as Jesse dumped a sack of supplies on the warped table. She had not spoken to him since they left the square, and she made no effort to start now. He moved about quietly, clearing dust, checking the roofline, patching what he could. She watched him from a corner, eyes narrowed, arms folded so tight her knuckles turned white. You were in that gang, she finally said. Jesse straightened, wiped his hands on his trousers. Yes. You rode with Eli. I did. And you left him. You left me. Jesse did not flinch. I ran, that is the truth of it. Clara's voice dropped into something bitter. Coward. He nodded once, without protest. You watched him die? I did. You left me screaming in that canyon like I was nothing. I did. Clara's eyes welled, but she blinked the tears back, shaking her head. So why now? Why play the savior when all I needed back then was for someone to pull me out of the damn fire? Jesse looked at her, his voice low. Because I have lived with it. Every morning, every night. And I am not here to make you forgive me. I am here to keep you breathing. She scoffed, turned her back to him, and stormed outside. That night they slept in opposite corners of the room, him on a bedroll near the fire, her on a cot beneath the lone window. Neither spoke. The only sound was wind slipping through the wood slats. By morning, Jesse had already gone to the general store. When he returned, he carried planks, nails, and a sack of seeds. Clara watched from the steps, still in her nightgown, as he repaired the front door, fixed the shutters, and dug a small patch of soil near the edge of the fence line. She said nothing when he planted them. Not until the next day did she ask, voice flat, "Why daisies?" He did not look up from the dirt. "You used to grow them behind Eli's cabin. You'd talk to them when you thought no one was watching." She looked away, suddenly unable to meet his gaze. Each day, Jesse worked. He fixed the broken stairs, chopped wood for cooking, scrubbed the soot from the hearth. He cooked simple meals, left her the larger portions. He never asked questions, never pushed. Clara kept her distance, watched him with suspicion. Then came the townsfolk. The first to visit were the Simmons sisters, spinsters with voices sharp as rusted saws, bearing a pie and 2 sets of narrowed eyes. They stayed for tea, asking overly polite questions. "Where do you sleep, Mrs. Vane?" asked one. Clara held her cup tight. "By the window. I like the breeze." "And Mr. Vane?" Jesse answered, smiling slightly. "I like the fire." The sisters left, unconvinced, but not hostile. Next came Mr. Bly, the hardware man, who pretended to need Jesse's opinion on roofing nails but spent more time looking through the window. Then the pastor's wife, offering scripture and staring at Clara's hands, as if expecting calluses or sins. Clara hated every second of it, but Jesse met each visitor with the same quiet patience, never once losing temper or telling her what to say. That evening, Clara sat on the back steps, watching the light fade. Jesse approached with a tin mug of water. She took it, not looking at him. "They think this is a lie," she said. He nodded. "I know. And maybe it is." Jesse sat beside her, not too close. "Maybe. But lies do not get you daisies." She turned her head slowly. "You keep doing things, fixing things. For what?" "For peace," he said. "Not yours, mine." Clara stared out across the dusk-swept field, voice almost a whisper. "I used to dream about someone coming back for me." "I should have," Jesse said. She nodded once. "Yes, you should have." But she did not stand up. She stayed beside him as the sun dipped, and for the first time in 3 years, she did not feel the air was made of knives. The daisies had not bloomed yet, but they were there, waiting. The old oak loomed behind the church, its twisted branches casting long shadows. A frayed rope still hung from one limb, forgotten by most, but not by Clara. It had been a place of hangings once, of justice, or revenge. Now, someone had tied wild yarrow and sagebrush around the base. A handful of townsfolk stood scattered, drawn by curiosity, duty, or suspicion. None smiled. Clara stood apart, wearing a gray dress stiff from time, its hem frayed. Her hair was braided, a single curl loose at her temple. She stared at the rope. Her stomach churned. Jesse appeared, walking from the barn path. His shirt was clean, boots polished, in his hand a small loop of leather. He offered it to her. She looked at it. "From your saddle?" He nodded. "All I had." "You think this is a joke?" "No," Jesse said quietly. "I think it's honest." Together they stepped toward the preacher beneath the oak. He was near blind, but stood steady, with a worn Bible open. "Jesse Vane," the preacher asked, Do you come of your own will, to bind yourself to Clara Belle Hartley?" "I do," Jessie said. "And Clara Belle?" "I'm here," Clara interrupted, eyes on the ground. "That's all I can give." The preacher gave a slow nod. "Then speak your vows." Jessie faced her. "I have no right to ask for your trust, your forgiveness, but I offer you mine for what I did and didn't do." The crowd stirred. "I stood silent while they judged you. I thought silence meant safety. I was wrong." He reached for her hand, voice stronger now. "Today I do not stand by law, I stand by you, not because I am your husband by name, but because I should have stood before the rope ever did." Clara's eyes glistened. "Jessie," she whispered. He slid the leather ring onto her finger. The preacher looked to her. "Do you accept?" Clara looked around, at the stairs, the oak, the history. Then she nodded. "I do." A hush fell. The preacher closed the Bible. "By word and witness you are joined." Jessie let her hand go. But Clara reached back, taking it again. In a town that had only ever seen her as a widow, a ghost, a mark of shame, Clara Hartley chose to hold someone's hand. A gasp came from the back, a mutter, but no one moved. Jessie bowed his head near hers. He didn't kiss her. He just held on. "I never asked for this," she murmured. "I know, but I'm still here. So am I." The preacher raised his voice to the crowd. "This bond is made. Let no law, rumor, or hatred tear it down." The bell from town rang once, hollow and distant. As the people slowly turned to leave, a woman whispered, "She cried." Another replied, "No, she chose." And beneath the oak, where justice once swung heavy in the air, Clara and Jessie stood, hand in hand, as the wind carried judgment off their shoulders. The house creaked at night, even with the shutters closed. The wind pushed through the boards like it had something to say. Clara sat at the edge of the cot, her arms wrapped around her knees, watching the fireplace throw shadows across the floor. Jessie was by the window, fixing a hinge that squealed each time it moved. He had been quiet all day, but not in the heavy way. He had been thoughtful, moving slower, choosing his words more carefully. She noticed. When he finished, he walked over and handed her a folded blanket. "You are going to catch cold sitting like that?" Clara didn't answer right away. Her voice came soft, more tired than cold. "Why did you lie for me?" He hesitated, then sat on the floor beside her, arms resting on his knees. "I didn't lie," he said. "Not in the way you mean." She raised an eyebrow. He looked at the fire. The night Red Valley fell. I tried to stop Eli. We all knew the law was closing in. He wanted to burn the camp and take the money east. I told him it was madness. Clara said nothing, but her breath hitched. I grabbed his arm, told him to run, to leave the gold, to take you and go. Clara whispered, "He said you ran first." "I did," Jessie said, "after he knocked me down, after I saw the smoke and heard the gunshots. I crawled through the canyon on my belly like a worm and hid beneath a dead horse until dawn." Clara turned away. "I heard you screaming," Jessie added, quieter now, "and I did nothing." Silence stretched out like rope between them. "I hated you," Clara finally said. "I prayed you had died. I deserved that. I slept in a barn for a month after that night," she said. "Stole bread from a church. One night, I laid on the edge of a cliff and thought about rolling off it." Jessie turned his head toward her. "But I didn't," she went on. "Not because I had hope, but because I wanted to outlive every one of you. I wanted you to know I was still breathing." He nodded slowly. "That's fair." They sat like that, the fire dwindling. "I thought this was a game," she murmured. "You showing up pretending to be my husband." "It started that way," he said. "But somewhere between planting those daisies and sewing that damn roof, I forgot what was real and what was not." She looked down at her hands. "I don't know what to do with someone like you," she admitted. "You do not have to do anything." He stood, went to his bedroll, and stretched out on his back. She lay down, facing the wall. Minutes passed. Then she said, without turning, "Do you believe in ghosts?" Jesse's voice was low. "I think we carry ours." Clara pulled the blanket over her shoulders, teeth tight against a tremble. The wind hissed through a crack in the window. She rolled over, not facing him, but not away either. "Come here." He turned toward her. "Clara." "Not for that," she said. I'm tired of shaking." Jesse crossed the room slowly, knelt beside her cot, then lay beside her, careful not to touch. A moment passed. She reached for his hand. It was rough, scarred, calloused, but warm. Her fingers slid into his and held. Neither spoke. He lay still, hands intertwined, as the fire went out. Then Jesse whispered, "If I could live that night again, I would have pulled you out. No matter what Eli did, I would not have left you." Clara didn't answer, but her hand tightened. And for the first time in 3 years, sleep came without the taste of ash. Smoke curled into the sky like a signal flare, black, thick, choking the clouds above the cedar ridge. Jesse saw it before he reached the bend in the trail. His horse, Lancer, reared slightly as the heat touched the air. The house. He kicked the flank hard. By the time he reached the clearing, the roof was caved in, flames eating through what little remained. The garden was scorched, the flower patch crushed under bootprints. No sign of Clara. The barn door hung open, the fence had been kicked apart, and on the porch rail, etched crudely into the wood with a knife, was a name. Jesse's stomach turned cold. Roy Doghand Calloway, one of the last ghosts of Red Valley. He'd thought him dead, thought the ambush took him like the rest. He was wrong. Jesse threw open the ruined chest by the well. His rifle was gone. The revolver from the drawer, gone too. Only the small pistol he had tucked inside his coat remained. He mounted again, teeth clenched, eyes burning not from the smoke, but from fury. Roy had Clara, and Jesse had just enough blood left to fix that mistake. The tracks led into the foothills, toward the jagged ridges east of town, where the canyons turned red with iron and secrets. Jesse followed the broken brush, the scuffed heels in the dirt, the occasional thread of gray cloth caught on a limb. The trail narrowed into a pass flanked by towering stone, Devil's Hollow. Fitting. He dismounted before the bend and moved on foot, pistol drawn, boots silent against the dust. The voice echoed first, gravel thick, smug. "I always knew you'd crawl out of your hole, Jesse." He stepped forward, slowly. Roy stood with Clara in front of him, a pistol pressed to her ribs. She was gagged with cloth, hands tied in front. He looked the same, just older, dirtier, eyes sunk deeper into his skull. His hat was the same one Jesse remembered, battered, blood-stained, too proud for a coward. "You made yourself a wife out of Hartley's scraps?" Roy laughed. "Hell, she screams prettier than she talks. I might keep her after all." Jesse raised his gun, voice steady. "Let her go." "Or what? You gonna do what you didn't do last time? Pull a trigger?" Roy moved the pistol to Clara's temple. "You owe me," he snarled. "You were supposed to go down with the rest of us, but you ran, and you left me bleeding in the rocks." "I left a murderer to die," Jesse replied. "I regret nothing." Roy smirked, cocked the hammer. The shot rang out. Jesse dove left as Roy fired. The bullet grazed his shoulder, hot and sudden like a branding iron. He hit the dirt, rolled, fired again, missed. The air was filled with smoke. No room, no sound. At the very least, mist spouting. Clara dropped to her knees in the confusion. Roy turned toward Jesse, eyes wild. Jesse bled into his shirt, breath short, pain searing with every movement. But he stood. He did not run this time. Roy aimed again. Clara moved. She reached into Jesse's coat pocket, the one she'd seen him check every morning before town trips. Her fingers closed around the grip of the hidden pistol. She turned. Roy noticed too late. The shot struck him square in the chest. He staggered backward, mouth open, gun falling from his hand. Blood soaked through his vest like spilled ink. He looked at Clara in disbelief, as if the idea of her ending him was more painful than the bullet itself. Then he dropped. Clara's hands trembled around the pistol. She stared at the body, at the blood, at the silence. Jesse limped to her, clutching his shoulder. "Clara!" She turned, eyes wide, and ran to him, catching him before he fell. "You are bleeding." "So are you," he said, nodding to her scraped wrist. "Damn woman, that was my best coat." She choked out a laugh, half sob, half breath. "You hid a gun in your coat?" "In case someone came back to finish old sins." She helped him down to sit against the stone wall. "I thought I'd need saving again." He winced, pressing cloth to his wound. "Not this time." She looked at the gun in her hand, then dropped it with a clatter. "I killed him," she whispered. "You saved us." He reached for her hand, the one that had pulled the trigger. She gave it to him. "You okay?" he asked. "No," she said, "but I will be." He leaned his head back, breathing hard. Clara watched the light change in the canyon, the sun beginning to dip. "We need to get you back," she said. "Give me a minute." She rested her head gently on his good shoulder, their hands still linked. "I never wanted to be someone who had to shoot a man," she whispered. "You did not have to be," Jesse said. "You chose to be." She closed her eyes, felt the warmth of him beside her, the weight of everything they had both carried. For once, she did not feel alone. And for the first time she realized she had not just been saved. She had saved something too. Someone. The town of Larkspur Ridge had not seen a man bleed so much and live. Jesse Vane had lost nearly half his blood by the time Clara dragged him down from Devil's Hollow, slung across the back of a borrowed mule. She walked beside him the whole way, mud to her ankles, shirt soaked in his blood, eyes like thunderclouds refusing to break. The doctor from San Marcos rode in the next morning, summoned by telegraph and urgency. He barked orders, stitched flesh, drained fever, poured whiskey into Jesse's mouth when water would not stay. But Jesse did not wake. Not that first day. Not the second. Clara sat beside him, unmoving, the skin beneath her eyes darkening like bruises. She never left, not to sleep, not to eat. She watched the rise and fall of his chest, like it was the only thing left tying her to the earth. On the third night, with storm clouds whispering outside, his fingers twitched. "Jesse?" Her voice cracked from silence. He groaned faintly. Clara leaned closer, hand on his cheek, forehead nearly touching his. "Come back," she whispered. "You do not get to save me and die." His eyes fluttered, then opened, slowly, weakly, but open. He blinked against the dim light, gaze searching until it found hers. "Clara," he rasped. She laughed, wet, broken, beautiful. "You stubborn, foolish, mule-hearted man." "Good to see you too," he murmured. She wiped her face, then cupped his hand in both of hers. "You were supposed to run." "I did," he said. "Once. Never again." She leaned in, pressing her forehead to his. "I used to be the widow of a liar," she said, voice trembling. "A man who wore a mask until the day he died." Jesse didn't speak, letting her words fall like rain. "I want to be the wife of a man who bleeds for what he believes, who stands in front of bullets, and between me and every damned ghost." He smiled faintly. "You sure about that? I snore." Clara laughed again, soft and breathless. "Then I will learn to sleep through thunder." She pulled something from her pocket, a small box wrapped in cloth. Inside, resting on worn velvet, was a simple silver ring. Its band was rough but strong, shaped with a silversmith's care. Jessie stared at it. "I did not steal it," she said. "It was forged by old Tom the blacksmith. Said it was the least the town could do. Said he was wrong about us." Jessie looked at her with wide, tear-glazed eyes. "Is this you asking me?" She shook her head. "No." Then she stood. "This is you asking me, again, for real. While you are half dead, still ugly, and twice as heavy, with regret." He chuckled through the pain, then winced. "Clarabelle Hartley, no, Clarabelle, whatever you'll be." You get to choose, she said. He swallowed hard, then reached out, hand trembling, and took the ring. He held it up like a promise to God, to the ghosts, to the wind itself. Will you marry me? She nodded. I already did, but yes, again, 1,000 times. He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit. Outside the window, the wind had changed. It no longer whispered warnings. It carried the smell of rain and wheat and beginnings. That afternoon, word spread fast. It was no longer the widow of an outlaw. He was the woman who stood in fire and chose love twice. When she stepped out to buy bread the next morning, people looked. But they no longer whispered. They nodded, tipped hats. Even the preacher's wife smiled. And Clara smiled back. 2 years passed like water over rock, slow, carving, and permanent. Near the southern edge of the Texas frontier, where the grass grew tall and the horizon stretched so wide it seemed to swallow the sky, there stood a modest ranch. Fences ran long but not high. Horses roamed free inside the wide paddocks. The brand they carried, burned gently into their flanks, was not a letter or a symbol of bloodline or property. It was a small, simple image. A woman's hand held open, palm up. They called it Widow's Brand Ranch. The name made some smile, some flinch, but it was remembered. Clara kept the books and trained the new hands. Jesse managed the horses in the forge. They never grew wealthy, but they never grew cold again. They built more than just fences. In the second year, a Comanche boy appeared by the fence line, silent as the dusk. Clara brought him bread. Jesse gave him rope and taught him knots. He stayed. A month later, 2 girls came, sisters, skin pale and voices rough from crying. Jesse found them curled behind a haystack during a storm. Clara bathed them, fed them, gave them names they could choose themselves. By winter, 7 children lived in the bunkhouse. Not one of them asked where the others had gone. They all came from different corners of pain, orphans, runaways, outcasts from both sides of the old border. Here, no one asked what tribe you belonged to or whose war you lost. They asked only if you could ride, if you could feed a sick colt, if you could clean a saddle with care. Jesse never spoke of Red Valley. He never mentioned Eli Hartley or Roy or the old names that still flickered in nightmares. If a child asked about the scars on his shoulder, he said they were from picking peaches too fast in his youth. No one believed him, but no one pressed. Clara, however, told stories. Not often, not for glory, but when the fire was low and the children were quiet, she would speak, not of revenge, but of mercy. She told of a town that once tied her to a post and spat at her name, and of one man who stepped forward, not for honor, not to be remembered, but because it was right. She spoke not with bitterness, but with clarity, so the young ones would know that surviving wasn't just staying alive, it was choosing to love again, after everything told you not to. Sometimes, visitors passed through. They'd ask about the brand, the name. One woman from Laredo tried to laugh. What kind of place names itself after widows? Clara looked her in the eye. The kind that gives them back their lives. The woman never laughed again. They had no church on the ranch, no preacher. But they had mornings where Clara and Jesse stood on the porch in silence, hands linked, the sun rising slow behind them. They had evenings when the wind carried songs in 3 languages. They had peace. And when the rains came, they let the roof leak just a little to remind them where they had been. In the end, there were no monuments, no headlines. But there was a field full of strong horses and children who could ride like the wind. And there was a woman who once stood with rope around her wrists, now holding out her hands to strangers with nothing in return but shelter. In a land where law had once failed justice, they survived, not because of love alone.